Hello, hello. Welcome back. This week, we're doing something a little bit different on the show. I'm sharing the audio from our video series that is also dropping this week on laying the foundation for your entrepreneurial success. And this episode is the audio from part one of the series. This one covers setting goals, so feel free to enjoy the listening experience here. But if you want to check out the actual video, you can head over to millennialmm.com/goals. All right, friends, enjoy the show. Hey, Brad Mulvey here. First off, let me offer a huge thank you to those of you who checked out the last video and those of you who commented on the blog page there. It's awesome to hear from you, hear the questions and the thoughts that you had. I love the interaction we're getting in the community that we're starting to build up here. If you haven't seen that video yet, go ahead and stop here. You're going to want to check that out before we dive into today's lesson because we're going to be building on the foundation we set in that one. And what we talked about there was creating a vision for your life and writing out a vision statement that serves as the concise but powerful message in terms of the direction that you want to take your life. And the reason we went through that exercise of creating a vision is so that you can begin building a business that is going to support that vision. You're here likely watching this video because you know that there's so much potential within you to do so much more. And through the path of entrepreneurship, I've learned that that's exactly how you can do that. You can create this epic life that serves to bring you to the dream life that you have. And that's where the vision aspect of that came into play. And you see, my whole goal is to help you and the listeners of my podcast first of all, identify a business and then also launch it and start building it so that you can quickly and efficiently create that life that you're dreaming of. And with that vision that I taught you in last video and with what we're going to be learning in this video, we're going to begin to lay the foundation for doing just that, building that business. So why am I talking to you about this? Well, 3.5 years ago, I was in that same position and I went through a transformation. You see, I was driving 2 hours to work every day and I just knew that I had so much more to offer to the world, to my family, and most of all to myself. There was this potential in me that I knew was not being met. And so that's why I went ahead and I launched the Millennial Mastermind podcast. That has served as my platform to connect with over 100, nearly 150 different mentors and teachers who are already living the life that I admire. They're building businesses and creating an impact in the world. Those mentors have taught me some strategies and tactics on how to build a business and where to get started, which is such a hard part to get through, but to create a business and ultimately create a life worth living. So I'm passing along everything that I've learned along the way and will continuing to learn and teach as I go through this process. So in that last video, we talked about vision statements. We talked about creating this clear picture of where you want to go. Today, we're going to be getting a little bit more tactical and diving into how to set meaningful goals that will get you to that vision. So we're going to be looking at setting the long-term, medium-term, and short-term goals that you can then get started on today to start taking action towards creating that business and living that life and that vision. So before that totally overwhelms you, let's dive into exactly how to do it, because I know that's kind of crazy just talking about and thinking through, but I'm going to share a strategy that's worked for me and has worked for thousands of other people in terms of setting these specific goals to get to that vision. And what I talked about last video was setting a 10-year vision. And what we went through is the different buckets or areas of your life that really were the key aspects. And so for me, and the template that I follow and that I recommend you do as well, it's spirituality, relationships, health, business, wealth, and personal life. And I think that those 6 buckets are a great starting point. If you need to change those up for your personal life, it's not set in stone. If there's something else that you want to add to that, absolutely do so. Maybe you're an artist and art is very important. That could be a bucket for sure. But for me, for example, that would be my art is the podcast, and that would fall under business at this point in my life. But if you haven't written your vision for at least that business bucket of your life, make sure you do that before you dive into this goal setting, because that's going to be essential to be able to make sure the goals you're setting are appropriate for where you want to head. So now let's go through the specific goal setting process. You have these different areas, and there can be different goals, and it's going to be different goals for the different buckets. And as you follow along in this video, I encourage you to pause and work through this, or maybe you prefer just to watch through it once and then come back to it. Whatever is your learning style, go with that. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to goal setting is something called setting SMART goals. And SMART is an acronym that you may have heard before. I've definitely talked about it on the podcast, and I did not invent this framework. So you may have heard of SMART goals before, but it's definitely worth reiterating here because I think they're very important when you're thinking about goal setting. So what that stands for is SMART. The S is specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for relevant, and T for time-bound. Now in this video, we don't have time to go through those in a whole lot of detail, but I'll go through a quick overview of why it's important to stick to that framework and what that means exactly. So specific, starting with, is you want the goal to be very, very specific and narrow, that you can understand exactly what it would mean to reach that goal. You don't want there to be any ambiguity in there. Measurable is important because you need to be able to measure your progress, and you need to be able to track where you're at and know when you've completed that goal. Attainable is important because it needs to be realistic within the expectations, especially when we talk about time bound, of what is possible. I do not want this to be a limiting factor in your goal setting, however, but make sure it's something that is within the realm of possibility for when you're setting your goals. In our vision statement, we talked about not limiting yourself at all. Here, it's much of the same, but you do want to make sure it is attainable, especially within the time that we're talking about, because otherwise you might just get overwhelmed and scratch the whole process in general. So A is attainable, R is relevant. You want to make sure that what you're doing is relevant to that vision that you set for yourself and that process we went through. You want to make sure that at the end of the day, when you accomplish this goal, not if, that it brings you closer to that mission that you're serving, towards that vision that you have for your life. And finally, time bound. This one's very important because if you don't set an end date, a due date, a goal date on these goals, then it's going to be too open-ended and you can continue to kick the can down the road, so to speak. So make sure that you're limiting yourself to a specific set of time. And the framework I'm about to teach you automatically has that baked in, so you won't even have to worry about it. The way that I think about setting goals, and the analogy that I like to use, is that it's like climbing a mountain. And we'll use Mount Everest for this example because everybody's heard of it and it's easy to picture. But when you first look at that beast of a rock formation, it seems inconceivable that you can get to the top on your own feet. So how do we, and that's oftentimes like setting a really big goal and having a vision for your life. At the beginning, it just seems so big and so inconceivable that you can accomplish that feat that a lot of times people don't even get started and they don't even go through this exercise because it is overwhelming. But what we're walking through today teaches you the specific way to give you the path to reaching that goal with very achievable steps. So the first step you need to do when you're climbing a mountain is you need to choose your route. You see, there's different paths to getting to the top of a mountain, and you need to pick one that looks like it's going to make the most sense for you. And so that's just determining, okay, how am I going to go about this? And that might be picking your framework for setting the goals, which is what we're doing now. So hopefully this can serve as your path, your route. The next thing that you have to do is work your way backwards from the top of that mountain. So the value in doing this is that you can identify the different checkpoints along the way and the different time frames in which you need to reach those to ultimately hit that long-term goal or that long-term vision. And the last thing, now that you have the route and you have these checkpoints by working backwards, is you need to break it down into the smallest possible initial actions. And this is where you begin to really identify how you get started, what are the first things you need to do, and you start to pick up momentum because you're checking off things on the box and you're actually working towards accomplishing that long-term goal. So as I encouraged you in the vision setting section in last video, was to look at your 10-year vision. And I still stick by that. I think that's the best way to go. And I think that will be what serves you best for this exercise. So you have your 10-year vision in mind. And let's focus on the business aspect for now, that business bucket of your life. Once you know where you want to be in 10 years, let's bring that back. Let's work our way backwards down that mountain and say, where do you want to be in 3 years? And this isn't so much as setting a vision as instead, we're going to borrow a little bit of language from the book The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, because they have a really great way of outlining this. But what is the one thing that you need to do in the next 3 years to reach that 10-year vision? So get very specific here and identify, okay, if I want to be at that point in 10 years, where do I need to be in 3 years? And again, this is not an overarching vision. Now we're focused on that one bucket of your life. So it might be owning your dream business, for example. So where do you need to be at in 3 years? What is the one thing you need to accomplish? Once you identify that one thing that you need to have done in 3 years, you can take a step back even further and say, what is the one thing that I need to do in the next year to be on track towards meeting that 3-year goal? Really, again, get specific here. The time-bound piece of it is baked into 1 year. Once you have that done, we're going to break the year into quarters and say, what is the one thing that I need to do in the next 3 months, in the next quarter of the year, to be on track towards accomplishing that 1-year goal? Do you see where I'm going with this? Now we can take a look at that quarterly goal and say, what is the one thing I need to do in the next month to be on track to hit that point? We'll go back even further. What's the thing that I have to do, the one thing in the next week to be on track for that 1 month goal? And finally, you know what you need to do next week. You know where I'm going with this. What is the one thing that you need to do in the next day to be on track for that 1 week goal? And by working backwards like this, you can see we've gotten very specific to the very next step that we need to take. In the mountain climbing example, this would be like taking that first step at base camp towards the top of the mountain. And that anybody can take one step. It doesn't take much effort to be able to get a step going. But this is how we're going to reach that ultimate vision, and how we're going to reach those long-term goals is by taking one step at a time. And I know that a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, cool. That sounds like the most repetitive and redundant process that I've ever heard. And I don't know that that's going to work for me. I promise you that by working backwards like this, you're going to be able to figure out the micro steps that need to be achieved for you to continue to make progress towards your goal. And the key thing here is that you're going to be building up momentum. So by taking a small bite-sized piece of action each day, you're continuing to build momentum and working towards that goal, which will build on itself and will help you just gain steam and just charge up that mountain towards that goal. And like your vision can change and grow, as we talked about in the last video, your goals will as well. The great thing about this process is you can review, okay, after 3 months or 6 months of working towards even a week, you can start to see, okay, I'm further ahead than I expected I was. I'm a little bit behind. I'm veering in a different direction. And you can start to iterate on where your goals need to be aligned to make sure that you continue to work towards them. But it will give you the confidence to take intentional and meaningful action every single day towards your ultimate goal. And that's what we're going for here. Another objection that I commonly hear when talking through this is that people don't know what their 10-year goal or vision really looks like. Hopefully the vision setting process got you there, but even thinking through what your 10-year goal is in one area, and specifically, let's talk about it as we have been with creating and launching a business. People will say, well, I don't know what that business is yet and where I want that business to be in 10 years. But that's actually the point. So let's use that example. Say that your goal or your vision in 10 years is to own the perfect business, making a difference in the world, feeling fulfilled with what you're doing, and just loving the business that you built. That is a perfect 10-year goal. Let's rewind it back to 3 years, and maybe the goal then for your 3-year goals is just having launched that business. Okay, well, that seems a little bit more achievable. Rewind it back to a year, and the goal is just to have identified the business. So now you have 12 full months to really figure out what that's going to look like, plus 2 more years to actually get to the point of launching the business. So that's gathering the skill sets, the knowledge, to understand what needs to happen to get to that point. And you're working your way backwards to the next 3 months then is to identify a group of individuals that will help you to achieve that, help you to create the skill sets and identify business opportunities. You go back, roll it to your 1 month goal, and that's to really get engaged with some of these people and start to vet out what some of the groups are that are out there. Maybe your 7 day, your 1 week goal is to identify 7 organizations that you can explore. And then your 1 day goal is to find one organization that is entrepreneurial focused that you can find online and gather some information about. So going through that process will take a little bit more deep thought than what I just outlined. But as you can see, it gets you to a point where you have a very achievable goal set ahead of you, and you can start taking action confidently that you're going to be working towards your ultimate vision. I love a quote here that I think is very applicable by Bill Gates. And he said, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And that's the whole idea is in 10 years, it's hard to visualize where or conceptualize where your life can be. And you might be a person like me who's overly optimistic at times and overly ambitious in what you can do in 1 year. But as you take consistent action and walk through these steps and you're continuously working towards creating a better future, you will be absolutely amazed at the things that you can accomplish over time. And patience is our friend here. So now you've set a vision for your life. You've got the goals that you've actually walked through, and you know what you need to be doing, the action that you need to be taking towards working towards that. And you have the short, medium, and long-term goals really outlined there. What's next? I think the most important thing that you can do is surround yourself with people who will support you in the journey towards achieving those goals. And we're going to see in our next video exactly how you can do that. I'm going to share my thoughts and what I've learned along my path to creating that network of people that can really serve as your board of advisors and really be your support group as you're going through this. We'll see an example of somebody close to me who has done just tremendous things in building out their network and starting to take action towards building their dream business. And so I just have one request of you. Please leave a comment below. Let me hear after you go through this process, what's the first step that you need to take What is your one-day goal towards achieving your dreams? Or feel free to share any other thoughts or questions below. But thank you guys for being here today, and I can't wait to see you again in the next video.